Did you know that your body might be quietly whispering a warning about a stroke that you could completely prevent if you pay attention in time? Hello, I am Dr. Sam Wells, a senior health specialist in the United States. Today, I want to share something extremely important, especially for those who have reached the age of 60 and beyond. Every year, nearly 800,000 Americans face a stroke, and it is deeply concerning that 3/4 of them are over 65 years old. But what troubles me most is that in up to 85% of cases, our bodies silently send out warning signs, sometimes hours or even days before a stroke occurs. Unfortunately, many of us ignore these signals, thinking they are just fatigue, lack of sleep, or simply aging. From my many years of experience working with older adults, I have learned that recognizing the early signs of a stroke can save lives and lead to near complete recovery. Therefore, if you care about your own health and the well-being of your loved ones, please share this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss important health updates we regularly share. Let us listen to our bodies, understand them, and act in time. Looking back on more than 3 decades of working with people over 60, I realized that a stroke does not always come with loud warning bells. In reality, many people overlook the smallest signs, and that can change their entire lives within hours. Let me tell you the story of Edward, a 71-year-old man, to show how a stroke can begin quietly but can be prevented if recognized in time. Edward was a retired teacher living alone in a cozy suburban home. One ordinary morning, he felt a slight numbness in his left hand. It did not hurt. It was not uncomfortable. Just a strange feeling, as if his hand did not fully belong to him. He shook his hand, thinking he had just slept in the wrong position. But later, when he called to order lunch, his words suddenly became slurred. His sentences came out wrong, as if his brain and lips were out of sync. Edward dismissed those signs, telling himself he was just tired or dehydrated. Sadly, only a few hours later, while preparing dinner, he suddenly collapsed in the kitchen. A stroke had struck, silently but fiercely. This is a story I have seen far too many times in my career. Early signs such as numbness, slurred speech, or brief dizziness are often ignored. But if Edward had noticed the abnormality sooner and taken action immediately, his chances of full recovery would have been much higher. That is why listening to our bodies and understanding their signals is vital. Stories like Edward's are not isolated cases. Research from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke shows that more than 60% of older adults who experience a minor stroke or a transient ischemic attack, TIA, had at least one warning sign beforehand that they either did not recognize or ignored. These are precious moments, hours that could make the difference between full recovery and lasting disability, between life and death. So how can we recognize these early signs? In truth, a stroke rarely announces itself with a loud alarm. It often begins with very small symptoms that seem insignificant, but are extremely serious if ignored. A slight numbness, a moment of slurred speech, a brief dizzy spell, all are signals your body is sending, whispering, "Pay attention. Something is not right." In my experience, recognizing these small signs and taking immediate action is the key factor that determines whether recovery will be complete or complications will persist. Older adults often think that tiredness, occasional dizziness, or brief forgetfulness are just parts of aging. But in reality, sudden changes in sensation, speech, vision, or coordination are warning signs that must not be dismissed. That is why, in the next part, I want to look closely with you at the 10 early warning signs of a stroke. They are not always obvious, but if you learn to observe carefully, you will notice that your body is sending important signals. We will explore each sign, from the smallest physical changes to shifts in cognition or speech, so that each of us and our loved ones can act in time to protect health, independence, and a full life. These signs are the silent bells that, if we listen carefully, can help us save lives, our own and those of the people around us. And that is exactly why I encourage you to share this information. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that every family member and every friend can recognize a stroke early and respond before it is too late. Sign 1. Sudden weakness or numbness on one side of the body. In my work with older adults, I have witnessed many cases where a small physical change signaled that a stroke was about to occur. One of the most important, yet often overlooked, warning signs is sudden weakness or numbness on one side of the body. Imagine a typical morning for Mrs. Claire, a 75-year-old woman living in Ohio. She woke up and noticed a strange feeling in her left leg. It felt numb, almost as if it no longer belonged to her. At first, she thought it was just from sitting in the wrong position or that her leg was cold. But only an hour later, as she was preparing breakfast, her left arm began to feel weak. It turned out this was not simple fatigue or aging. It was an early warning that a stroke was quietly developing. This happens because the part of the brain that controls the opposite side of the body is not receiving enough blood. When blood flow cannot deliver sufficient oxygen and nutrients, brain cells begin to die very quickly. Since each side of the brain controls the opposite side of the body, we see sudden weakness or paralysis in one arm, one leg, or one side of the face. What makes this dangerous is that most older adults do not feel pain in the first few hours, so they often ignore the warning. From my personal experience, I remember clearly the moment when Mrs. Claire's son noticed something was wrong. He had once watched a video about early stroke signs and immediately recognized that his mother's leg and arm were signaling danger. He called emergency services right away, and within 90 minutes, Mrs. Claire received timely medical care. As a result, she made a full recovery and avoided the serious complications that many others face. This shows that every minute counts. When one side of the body suddenly becomes weak or numb, do not try to guess the cause or wait for it to pass. This is a serious warning your body is sending, and quick action can save your life or the life of someone you love. In such moments, any delay means losing more brain cells, losing mobility, and sometimes losing independence altogether. Not all symptoms appear at once. Sometimes it is just a weak hand. Sometimes it is a brief numbness in the leg. But if it happens suddenly and feels unusual compared to normal, it should never be ignored. In recent studies, more than 70% of stroke patients reported that weakness or numbness on one side of the body was their first symptom. Those who ignored or delayed seeking help faced far greater risk of severe complications. Stories like Mrs. Claire's are not just powerful examples, but also reminders to all of us, especially those over 60. Listen to your body, notice even the smallest changes, and act quickly when a stroke occurs. Early intervention not only improves recovery, but also reduces the chance of long-term dependence on others. And there is one thing I always remind my patients: never underestimate a small change in your body. A sudden feeling of numbness in your hand, leg, or face, even without pain, is a warning you must not ignore. Remember, your body is sending a signal, and timely action can change your future. In summary, sudden weakness or numbness on one side of the body is one of the most important early warning signs of a stroke. Observation, awareness, and quick response are what help us maintain our health, independence, and long-term happiness. Share this story with your loved ones. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that every family can recognize the early signs of a stroke and protect one another in time. Sign 2. Sudden difficulty speaking or understanding speech. As we age, many people think that moments of stuttering or forgetting words are just normal signs of getting older. But in reality, sudden difficulty speaking or understanding speech can be a serious warning sign of a stroke quietly taking place. This is one of the signs I always emphasize to my elderly patients in the United States. Let me tell you about Mr. Robert, a 68-year-old veteran living in Kansas. One afternoon, he was telling a story to his granddaughter when she noticed that his words began to stutter and were not as fluent as usual. Mr. Robert also sensed something strange. He knew what he wanted to say, but his brain and mouth seemed disconnected. At first, he laughed it off and said, "I am just tired." But his granddaughter, who had learned about stroke signs in school, immediately noticed the difference. Because of her quick reaction, Mr. Robert was taken to the hospital promptly and made a full recovery within weeks. Difficulty speaking or understanding speech occurs when the language area in the left side of the brain the part responsible for forming words, expressing thoughts, and understanding language, is damaged. When blood flow to this area is interrupted, even for a few minutes, the brain cannot send proper signals to the speech organs. This results in slurred, incorrect, or completely absent speech. Sometimes, the voice sounds normal to others, but the person cannot understand or express what they mean. In my clinical practice, I have seen many families mistake this for simple tiredness or lack of focus. They ignore these early signs and lose the opportunity for early intervention. According to medical research, about 30% of stroke patients report that difficulty speaking or understanding speech was their first symptom. Those who recognize it late often face a much higher risk of long-term disability. Imagine how it feels when you suddenly cannot speak normally. You want to tell a story. Ask a simple question, but your words stumble. Your sentences are jumbled, and you cannot understand what others are saying. This experience is frightening, but more importantly, it signals that the brain is losing blood flow, and every passing minute causes more damage to brain cells. From my experience, those who are diagnosed early recover much better. That is why paying attention to unusual changes in speech among older adults is extremely important. If someone starts to stutter, use the wrong words, cannot understand simple sentences, or suddenly speaks incoherently, do not take it lightly. Even if the symptom disappears quickly, the brain has already suffered minor damage, which could be a warning of a major stroke to come. Mr. Robert's story is not just a medical example. It is a reminder that small changes in speech can be the warning bell your body is sending. Listening to your body, observing carefully, and recognizing what is different from usual can save your life or the life of someone you love. In elder care, I always advise families to pay attention to every small sign, from facial expressions and gestures to speech, because all of them can be messages from the brain. Sudden difficulty speaking or understanding speech is one of the most important early signs of a stroke, especially in people over 60. It is not a normal part of aging. It is a signal that the brain is in serious distress. Recognizing it early, acting quickly, and getting medical attention can completely change the outcome, protecting communication ability, independence, and long-term quality of life. Real life stories like Mr. Roberts not only help us recognize the signs, but also inspire us. Every act of awareness and observation has the power to save a life. I encourage you to share this information with your family and friends. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss important health insights. Because recognizing early warning signs is how we protect the people we love. Sign 3. Sudden changes in vision. When we reach our 60s or 70s, many people assume that blurred or unfocused vision is simply a normal part of aging. However, sudden changes in vision, such as blurriness, loss of part of the visual field, double vision, or the feeling that a grey curtain has fallen over the eyes, can actually signal that a silent stroke is occurring. This is one of the warning signs that I, after many years of caring for older adults in the United States, always emphasize to patients and their families. Let me tell you about Mrs. Lorraine, 79 years old, who lives in Ohio. One morning, as she was preparing to bake cookies, her left eye suddenly went dark. She rubbed her eye, blinked repeatedly, but her vision did not return to normal. She assumed it was just eye strain or a reflection of light. The same thing happened again the next day, only worse. Fortunately, her daughter noticed that something was wrong and took her to the hospital immediately. Doctors diagnosed her with a mini-stroke in the visual area of her brain. Thanks to the quick detection, they were able to prevent a much more serious stroke that could have happened just days later. These visual changes occur because of a blockage in the blood vessels of the retina, or in the areas of the brain responsible for processing visual information. When blood flow to these regions is disrupted, signals from the eyes cannot fully reach the brain, leading to blurred or partial vision loss. What makes this so deceptive is that the eyes and their internal structures often appear perfectly normal. The real problem lies in the brain. That is why so many people overlook these signs, assuming their eyes are just tired or that they need new glasses. I have seen many older adults experience these symptoms without realizing how serious they are. They might say, "My vision just blurred for a few minutes, then it cleared." Or, "It must have been the bright light." But these brief moments according to medical research, can actually be a transient ischemic attack, a short interruption of blood flow to the brain that signals a high risk of a real stroke in the near future. A 2020 study showed that older adults who experience sudden vision changes are 2 to 4 times more likely to suffer a stroke within 30 days compared to those who do not. Imagine the feeling of suddenly seeing the world blurred, or only half of what is in front of you. You are reading a newspaper, watching television, or simply walking around the house, and suddenly the image distorts or fades, as if a grey curtain covers your vision. It does not hurt, but it is extremely dangerous because the brain is being deprived of oxygen. Ignoring it could lead to permanent vision loss or other disabilities. From what I have seen, people who recognize these signs early often recover fully, both in vision and other functions. That is why I always urge older adults and their families to pay attention to even the smallest visual changes. If your eyes suddenly go dark, blurry, or feel covered by a grey curtain, even for just a few minutes, take it as a serious warning from the brain. Sudden changes in vision are not just eye problems. They are one of the earliest signs of a possible stroke. In medical practice, these visual changes often appear alongside other symptoms, such as weakness in the arms or legs, difficulty speaking, or loss of balance. However, sometimes they occur alone, leading people to underestimate them. Recognizing these signs quickly and acting immediately can protect the brain, preserve independence, and maintain quality of life in older adults. Mrs. Lorraine's story reminds us that a little attention and quick response can save both vision and life. In elder care, I always advise families to watch closely for changes in facial expression, gestures, eyes, and speech, because each can be a message from the brain. Share this information with your loved ones and friends, and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you will not miss valuable health knowledge. Recognizing early warning signs is how we protect those we love and prevent a serious stroke before it happens. Sign 4. Dizziness, loss of balance, or poor coordination. Have you ever stood up from a chair and suddenly felt as if the floor tilted, your steps staggered, your legs dragged behind you, or you nearly fell? Many older adults think this is simply a result of aging, weak leg muscles, or a brief drop in blood pressure. However, when these symptoms appear suddenly and without clear cause, they may be an early warning of a stroke, especially when the cerebellum or brainstem is affected. Let me share the story of Mr. William, 76 years old, from a small town in Ohio. One morning, while gardening, he stood up to fetch his watering can and suddenly felt unsteady, as though his legs no longer obeyed him. He had to hold on to the wall to avoid falling. His wife initially thought he was just tired, but when she looked closer, she noticed his expression was off, and his walk was uneven. She took him to the hospital right away. Doctors determined he had suffered a stroke in the cerebellum, the area that controls balance and coordination. Thanks to early detection and prompt treatment, Mr. William recovered quickly and continues his daily activities independently. The cause of these symptoms lies in the cerebellum and brainstem, two critical areas of the brain responsible for controlling balance, limb coordination, posture, and even basic functions such as heartbeat and breathing. When a stroke interrupts blood flow to these areas, the brain cannot send accurate signals to the muscles, leading to staggering, dragging steps, loss of balance, or difficulty performing coordinated movements like holding a glass, tying shoelaces, or picking up objects. In many cases, these symptoms are mild and brief, making them easy to dismiss. People often say, "I just felt a little tired," or "I must have walked too much." Yet research shows that more than 40% of cerebellar strokes in older adults are misdiagnosed during the first medical examination, because both doctors and families confuse them with inner ear problems, blood pressure fluctuations, or simple fatigue. Ignoring even a few minutes of these symptoms can result in permanent loss of mobility, or worse, lifelong dependence on others. In my experience, early recognition almost always leads to near complete recovery. Quick observation and immediate action are crucial. When an older adult suddenly feels dizzy, unsteady, weak in the legs, or unable to coordinate movements, pay close attention to other possible signs, such as weakness in the arms, slurred speech, or changes in vision. These may be the brain's urgent signals for help. Mr. Williams' story reminds us that strokes do not always strike loudly. They are not always accompanied by severe pain or a dramatic fall. Sometimes they begin quietly, almost imperceptibly, but if left unrecognized, the consequences can be devastating. That is why families and caregivers must watch closely for even the smallest daily changes in an older adult's movements. It is important to understand that dizziness and imbalance are not always just signs of aging. When they occur suddenly, with no prior history, or appear alongside other symptoms like weakness, difficulty speaking, or visual changes, it means the brain may be in danger. Early recognition and careful observation are key to protecting health, preserving independence, and maintaining quality of life for older adults. Share this information with your family and friends. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay informed about essential health knowledge. Recognizing these early warning signs is often the difference between life and lasting disability, and it gives our loved ones the chance to live their later years with independence and dignity. Sign 5. Sudden and severe headache. Have you ever experienced a sudden headache so intense that it nearly knocked you off your feet, sometimes accompanied by nausea or blurred vision? For many older adults, headaches are often dismissed as the result of stress, lack of sleep, or fatigue. But when the pain strikes suddenly, it is unusually severe and feels completely different from any headache you have had before. It could be an early sign of a hemorrhagic stroke, when a blood vessel in the brain bursts and creates pressure on the surrounding tissue. Let me tell you about Mrs. Angela, 73 years old, who lives in a small town in Michigan. One morning, she had just finished her daily crossword puzzle when she suddenly felt a sharp pain in the back of her head. The pain was so intense that she had to sit down, clutching her head with both hands, feeling as if her skull was about to explode. Moments later, she noticed her speech became slurred, and her words did not flow naturally. Her husband quickly realized something was wrong and rushed her to the hospital. There, doctors confirmed that she had suffered a minor hemorrhagic stroke thanks to timely medical intervention. Mrs. Angela not only survived, but also fully recovered her speech and mobility. The underlying cause of this symptom is a hemorrhagic stroke, a dangerous type of stroke caused by a ruptured blood vessel in the brain. When blood leaks into surrounding tissue, it increases pressure inside the skull and rapidly damages nearby brain cells, unlike ischemic strokes, which result from blocked arteries. Hemorrhagic strokes often occur without warning, and the sudden, severe headache is the first signal the body sends. In reality, many older adults ignore these unusual headaches. However, according to the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, 1 in 10 strokes among people over 60 is hemorrhagic, and most severe headache. If not treated immediately, this condition can lead to permanent disability, coma, or even death. From my years of experience working with older adults, I have seen that severe. Unusual headaches often come with other symptoms, such as slurred speech, blurred vision, dizziness, or loss of balance. Observing these signs carefully and getting the person to a medical facility as soon as possible can make the difference between life and death. A severe headache cannot always be relieved by ordinary pain medication. It is the brain's direct warning that bleeding is occurring and needs immediate attention. In Mrs. Angela's story, her husband's quick observation saved her life. This reminds us that recognizing the signs of a stroke is not only the responsibility of the person experiencing it, but also of those around them. Careful observation, rapid response, and never dismissing any unusual symptom are key to protecting health and life. For older adults, remember that not every headache is harmless. When you or a loved one experiences a sudden, severe headache that feels different from usual, especially if accompanied by nausea, blurred vision, or speech difficulties, it is time to watch closely and seek medical help immediately. Early recognition not only reduces the risk of disability, but also increases the chance of full recovery. Share this information with your loved ones and friends. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss valuable health knowledge. In the case of a hemorrhagic stroke, even 1 minute of hesitation can determine life or death. Recognizing early warning signs is a golden opportunity to save a life, preserve independence, and maintain quality of life in older age. Sign 6. Confusion, difficulty concentrating, or cognitive decline. Have you ever stood in your kitchen, looking at your familiar coffee maker, and suddenly felt confused, as if you had never used it before? These moments, often dismissed as forgetfulness or normal aging, can sometimes be the brain's silent alarm, signaling that a stroke may be approaching. Let me tell you about Mr. Henry, 74 years old, a retired mail carrier living in suburban Kansas. One morning, he was preparing to make his daily cup of coffee, but this time, as he stood in front of the machine holding his mug, he stared at the buttons in confusion. His wife asked a simple question, "Henry, do you want coffee?" And he responded awkwardly, as if he did not understand. Just an hour later, he could not remember his grandchildren's names. Alarmed, his wife took him to the hospital immediately, where doctors confirmed that he was experiencing a minor stroke affecting the hemisphere of the brain responsible for language, cognition, and memory. Thanks to prompt medical care, his memory and mental function were restored within days, and he returned to normal life without long-term impairment. This condition stems from reduced blood flow or localized brain damage, particularly in the cerebral hemisphere responsible for cognitive function, language, and memory. When blood cannot reach these areas, brain cells begin to die, leading to confusion, forgetfulness about familiar tasks, or difficulty understanding simple sentences. Many older adults dismiss these symptoms, thinking, "I am just getting old," or "I am tired." However, according to the American Stroke Association, sudden confusion or cognitive decline is one of the earliest warning signs of a stroke, especially in people over 65. In my experience, cognitive warning signs are often subtle and painless, making them easy to overlook. Yet, if you pay close attention, they frequently appear alongside other symptoms, such as slurred speech, loss of balance, or weakness or numbness on one side of the body. Recognizing these signs early and taking the person to a medical facility right away greatly improves the chances of full recovery and reduces the risk of long-term disability. Mr. Henry's story also reminds us that recognizing stroke symptoms is not only the patient's responsibility, but also that of family members and caregivers. Observing changes in attention, memory, or awareness in older adults can save lives. A brief moment of confusion or an unusual behavior that seems out of character, if noticed in time, can prevent a major stroke. For older adults, always remember that sudden confusion, difficulty concentrating, or cognitive decline is not always just a sign of aging. When these symptoms appear abruptly, especially when accompanied by weakness on one side, trouble speaking, or loss of balance, it is time to act quickly. Early recognition can protect independence, preserve quality of life, and reduce the risk of lasting disability. Share this information with your family and friends. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you will not miss vital health insights. Recognizing stroke symptoms early is not only a life skill, but also an opportunity to save a life, to protect the safety and happiness of those we love. Sign 7. Difficulty grasping or performing fine movements. Imagine a peaceful morning. You stand in front of your wardrobe, about to button your shirt or pick up a spoon for breakfast. Normally, these actions happen smoothly without a second thought. But today, your hand trembles. Your fingers do not respond as usual. The button feels impossible to fasten. The spoon slips from your grasp, and your coordination seems weaker than before. These small, seemingly harmless moments, often dismissed as part of aging, can actually be the brain's silent cry for help. From my years of working with older adults, I have seen many patients and families overlook these signs. They often say, "I am just getting older. My hands are not as steady," or "I must be tired today." Yet, in reality, these could be early signs of a stroke affecting the motor cortex and cerebellum, the regions responsible for fine movements, coordination, and grip. When blood flow to these areas decreases, nerve signals are disrupted, making simple actions, such as buttoning a shirt, brushing your teeth, or walking steadily suddenly difficult. Let me share the story of Mr. Leon Bradley, 80 years old, who enjoyed walking his dog every morning. One day, as he was strolling through his neighborhood, he noticed his right leg dragging behind. He tried to lift it, but it felt heavy, almost stuck. His hand trembled, and he struggled to hold the leash, trying to return home. He stumbled against a fence. A neighbor saw what happened, helped him, and immediately took him to the hospital. Doctors later confirmed that he had suffered a minor stroke affecting both the motor cortex and the cerebellum, the regions that control fine coordination between the hands and feet. Because he received treatment quickly, within a few weeks, Mr. Leon could walk normally again and handled daily tasks without difficulty. Changes in fine motor skills often appear suddenly, without pain, and are easy to overlook. However, they are critical warning signs that the brain is in distress. Research shows that over 40% of patients over 65 experience early stroke symptoms through difficulty with small movements, holding a pen, buttoning a shirt, or coordinating steps while walking. Recognizing these signs early, especially when combined with weakness on one side of the body, imbalance, or confusion, greatly increases the chances of recovery and reduces the risk of long-term disability. From a medical perspective, paying attention to such small details in daily life is not about being overly cautious. It is about protection. If you notice any sudden difficulty in grasping objects or coordinating your limbs, carefully observe what follows. Note the time it began and contact a doctor immediately. Awareness and early action are the keys to survival and maintaining quality of life. If these small signs go unnoticed, they could lead to falls, injury, or more severe stroke complications. Mr. Leon's story reminds us that even the smallest warning signs, when detected early, can mean the difference between independence and dependency, between wellness and lifelong impairment. For older adults and families, listen to your body and watch for subtle changes in movement. A button that suddenly feels hard to fasten, a spoon that slips too easily, or a foot that drags while walking. These could be your brain's silent plea for help. Share this message with loved ones. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you will not miss valuable health insights. Recognizing early stroke symptoms like these is not just a skill. It is a chance to protect independence, preserve quality of life, and safeguard the happiness of those you love. Sign 8. Unusual fatigue or weakness. If you have ever woken up feeling unusually heavy, drained, and exhausted, even though you did nothing strenuous the day before, it may not simply be aging or a bad night's sleep. I am Dr. Sam Wells, and in my years of working with older adults, I have found that sudden fatigue or unexplained weakness is often the body's silent alarm, a warning from the brain and heart. Imagine someone like Mr. Frank, 77 years old, who used to start each day with a brisk walk in the park. One morning, he felt as if his arms and legs weighed twice as much as usual. His heartbeat was faster, and even standing up from his chair left him breathless. He brushed it off, thinking, I am just getting older. I need to rest more. But the truth was that his brain and heart were working overtime to compensate for reduced blood flow. Those seemingly ordinary moments were actually signs that his body was under stress, and a stroke could be approaching. Physiologically, when blood flow to the brain suddenly drops or the heart is under strain, the body conserves energy by slowing down. You may feel unusually tired, weak, or short of breath, even without physical exertion. These symptoms are easy to dismiss because they are not painful or dramatic like slurred speech or muscle weakness. Yet they are among the earliest and most overlooked warnings that the brain is not receiving enough oxygen and nutrients to function properly. In my experience, many older adults and their families underestimate sudden fatigue. They often assume it is just old age, stress, or poor sleep. But if you pay close attention, there is a clear difference. This fatigue comes unexpectedly, without reason, and often appears alongside subtle signs such as difficulty focusing, weakness in the limbs, or loss of balance. When these symptoms occur together, the likelihood of an impending stroke increases significantly. Mrs. Margaret, 75 years old, she was active and healthy, often walking around her neighborhood each morning. One day, she felt too tired to stand up from her chair. Her family noticed she struggled to hold a cup and occasionally slurred her words. Acting quickly, they brought her to the hospital, where doctors found a mild blockage in her brain's blood vessels, a condition that could have led to a stroke if left untreated. After several weeks of monitoring and treatment, Mrs. Margaret fully recovered and avoided long-term damage. From a professional standpoint, unexplained fatigue or weakness in older adults should never be ignored, especially when it appears suddenly, without cause, and in combination with other changes in movement, cognition, or vision. Early recognition and timely response greatly improve the chances of recovery and help prevent serious complications. Pay attention to even small changes in your body. If one morning you feel unusually weak, struggle to stand, or notice your heart racing and breath shortening, do not dismiss it as normal. This may be your body's way of warning you that a stroke is near. Record when it happens and share this information with your loved ones so they can stay alert as well. Aging should be lived with vitality and independence. With just a bit of awareness and observation, you can detect stroke risks early and protect both your own health and that of your loved ones. Share this video with your family, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you will not miss important health information. Because recognizing early warning signs like unusual fatigue is a golden opportunity to stay healthy, independent, and strong for years to come. Sign 9. Sudden chest pain, shortness of breath, or rapid heartbeat. When people think of stroke, they often picture symptoms involving the nervous system, numbness, weakness, slurred speech, or vision changes. But in reality, the body sometimes sends other subtle yet serious warnings. I am Dr. Sam Wells, and through years of caring for older adults, I have learned that sudden chest pain, shortness of breath, or a rapid heartbeat can be overlooked signs of stroke risk linked to cardiovascular strain. Imagine Mr. Thomas, 72 years old, who has always considered himself healthy and begins each day with light exercise. One morning, while reading the newspaper, he suddenly felt a strange pressure in his chest. His breathing became labored. His heart began to race, even though he was sitting still. At first, he thought it was just anxiety or a brief moment of nervousness. But in truth, these symptoms were his body's way of warning that both his heart and brain were under significant stress, possibly signaling a stroke or serious heart complication if ignored. Physiologically, when the brain or heart does not receive enough oxygen and nutrients, the body reacts in several ways. You may feel chest tightness, shortness of breath, or a racing heartbeat, even without physical effort. This is the body's alarm system, indicating that blood circulation is compromised. When these symptoms occur together with neurological signs such as weakness, imbalance, or confusion, the likelihood of stroke increases dramatically. The story of Mrs. Ellen, 76 years old, clearly illustrates this. She was preparing breakfast when she felt her heart beating rapidly, her breathing quickening, and a slight pressure in her chest. She assumed it was anxiety or lack of sleep, but her daughter noticed something unusual. Her eyes looked different, her hands trembled, and her speech was not as fluent as usual, thanks to her daughter's attentiveness. Mrs. Ellen was taken to the hospital, where doctors discovered an irregular heartbeat combined with early signs of restricted blood flow to the brain. Without timely intervention, a stroke could have occurred within hours. Fortunately, with prompt care, she made a full recovery within weeks. From practical experience, I have seen that many older adults and families dismiss these signs, thinking they are simply due to age, stress, or fatigue. But let me emphasize, sudden chest pain, shortness of breath, or a racing heart without clear cause should never be ignored. These are warning signals that something serious may be happening within the heart or brain. Early recognition can greatly reduce the risk of severe complications, such as stroke or heart failure. These changes often appear alongside other early warning signs we have discussed: unexplained fatigue, weakness, speech difficulty, imbalance, or confusion. When multiple symptoms occur together, your body is sending an urgent message that requires immediate attention. Monitoring heart rate and blood pressure and sharing this information with your doctor can help detect problems early and allow for timely lifestyle or medical interventions. One important reminder for older adults: never underestimate small symptoms. Even a brief chest pressure, an unusually fast heartbeat, or shortness of breath without exertion may be the first step toward a cardiovascular-related stroke. Paying attention and noting when and how often these symptoms occur can help your doctor make accurate assessments and protect your long-term health. As I always remind my patients, healthy aging is about awareness and self-care. Observing your body daily, recognizing subtle changes, and sharing what you notice with loved ones are the best ways to prevent serious complications. Share this video with your family, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you will not miss important health information. Recognizing early signs, such as chest pain, shortness of breath, or rapid heartbeat, is your opportunity to stay healthy, independent, and maintain quality of life for years to come. Sign 10. Mild twitching or unusual movement in one part of the body. Through years of working with older adults, I have found that strokes do not always begin with obvious symptoms like limb weakness or slurred speech. Sometimes, the body gives subtler signals that are easy to miss. One of these is mild twitching or unusual movement in one part of the body. Imagine Mr. Thomas, 77 years old, a healthy man who regularly walks each morning. One day, while reading the newspaper, he noticed a slight, involuntary twitch in his left hand, as if it were no longer fully under his brain's control. He felt no pain and assumed it was due to fatigue or a lack of magnesium, but minutes later, the twitch spread to his lips, and his speech became slightly slurred. That was when he and his family realized something was not right medically. Mild twitching or abnormal movement in one area of the body often indicates damage to the part of the brain that controls movement. When blood flow to a specific brain region is reduced, the nerve cells there can malfunction, causing small, involuntary motions. This can be an early sign of stroke, especially a minor ischemic stroke or a transient ischemic attack, TIA. It is important to understand that these abnormal movements may last only a few seconds or minutes and then disappear, which leads many people to ignore them. Yet these fleeting moments can hold vital clues about brain health. When combined with other symptoms, such as weakness, difficulty speaking, unusual fatigue, or changes in vision, the risk of stroke increases significantly. The story of Mrs. Margaret, 80 years old, is another clear example. She began noticing her right fingers twitching slightly while eating breakfast. She assumed it was simply due to aging or tiredness. But upon closer observation, her family realized her grip was weaker than usual and her speech slightly slurred. Recognizing this as abnormal, they immediately took her to the hospital. Doctors discovered that she had experienced a transient ischemic attack. Thanks to early detection, she avoided a major stroke and recovered completely. In many cases, older adults and families fail to associate small twitches with stroke risk. They often think it is fatigue, age-related tremor, or a side effect of medication. But as I always remind my patients, any unusual twitching or jerking, especially when paired with other neurological signs, should be taken seriously. These are your body's early warnings, not to be ignored or delayed. In clinical practice, I often advise families to observe their loved one's hand, leg, and facial movements daily, noting when they occur, how long they last, and how frequently. Such details help doctors assess the risk accurately and intervene promptly. Recognizing these early signs, along with symptoms like weakness, vision changes, speech difficulties, unusual fatigue, or severe headache, provides a golden opportunity to prevent major strokes and preserve quality of life. A personal reminder from my years of experience: always trust your body's intuition. If you or a loved one notice mild twitching or sudden unusual movement in any part of the body, do not ignore it. That is your body's way of saying the brain needs immediate attention. Early recognition and action can save lives, enable full recovery, and prevent long-term complications. Ultimately, healthy aging is about awareness, observation, and timely action. Share this video with your family, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to stay informed. Recognizing early signs such as mild twitching or unusual movement in one part of the body will help you stay healthy, independent, and enjoy a fulfilling life for years to come. When you have recognized the early warning signs, the next important thing is not to panic or be afraid, but to know what to do to protect your life and the health of your loved ones. Over many years of working with elderly patients, I have seen that quick and precise action has saved countless lives, even in cases that seemed hopeless. One ordinary morning, Mrs. Clara, age 74, suddenly felt numbness in her left arm and had slight slurring in her speech. If her family had hesitated or thought, it is probably just fatigue or old age, the situation could have become serious within minutes. But because they acted quickly and took her to the hospital, doctors were able to intervene in time, save her life, and help her recover almost completely. This story illustrates a truth I always emphasize. Every second that passes means brain cells are dying, and the golden window to save the brain exists only within the first few hours. Therefore, the first principle I want to stress is this: when any sign of stroke appears, act immediately. Do not hesitate. Do not try to diagnose yourself, and do not wait for the symptoms to worsen. Call emergency services right away to receive professional help as soon as possible. From my real world experience, many people hesitate to call emergency services because they think it is just weakness, or what if it is not a stroke? But you must understand that the brain is extremely sensitive. Just a few minutes without proper blood flow can cause serious damage. If you delay calling for help, you are losing precious time that could save brain cells and prevent long-term disability. In medicine, we call this the golden hour, the early window after the first signs of stroke, when early intervention dramatically increases the chance of full recovery. Acting quickly also reduces the risk of complications. Many elderly patients who receive prompt treatment after a stroke can still walk, speak, and take care of themselves, instead of becoming fully dependent on others. This is why I always advise families to observe, take notes, and respond immediately to any warning sign, no matter how small, from limb weakness, numbness, difficulty speaking, changes in vision, unusual fatigue to mild twitching. Besides calling for help, you should also remain calm and keep the person safe. Place them in a comfortable position. Prevent falls or injury. Do not give them anything to eat or drink if swallowing is difficult. And carefully observe their symptoms while waiting for the medical team to arrive. Even these small actions play a critical role in protecting life and health. Another vital message I want to share: do not keep this knowledge to yourself. Share this video with your family, friends, and caregivers so that everyone can recognize the early signs of stroke. When more people know and act quickly, we can save many lives and reduce the lasting impact of stroke in the elderly community. Finally, let me emphasize once more, every second matters. Early recognition and prompt action not only save lives, but also preserve quality of life after stroke. Always listen to your body, pay attention to subtle changes, and never ignore them. That is the best way to stay healthy, independent, and enjoy your golden years. As I always remind my patients and viewers, share this video with your loved ones and caregivers, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss important health information. Recognize early, act quickly, and you can save your own life or the life of someone you love. Before we end today's video, let us review once more the 10 early warning signs of stroke, so this information stays deeply in your memory and can save you or your loved ones in an emergency. The first is sudden weakness or numbness on one side of the body, when your leg or face suddenly loses strength. Next is difficulty speaking or understanding language, slurred words, mixing up phrases, or being unable to follow a simple sentence. Then there are sudden vision changes, such as blurred sight, partial loss of vision, double vision, or the feeling of a grey curtain over your eyes. We also see dizziness, loss of balance, or poor coordination, walking unsteadily, dragging a leg, or easily falling. Another often overlooked but extremely serious sign is a sudden, severe headache, striking out of nowhere, sometimes accompanied by vomiting or blurred vision. In addition, confusion, difficulty concentrating, or reduced awareness should not be ignored, such as forgetting familiar places or failing to understand simple questions. There are also subtle yet dangerous signs. Difficulty with fine motor skills, like buttoning clothes, using utensils, brushing teeth, or poor hand-eye coordination, or unusual fatigue and weakness, feeling exhausted even without physical effort. Some may experience sudden chest pain, shortness of breath, or a racing heartbeat, signals tied to both heart and brain circulation. Lastly, do not overlook mild twitching or abnormal movements in part of the body, such as jerking in the arm, leg, or face that you cannot control. Looking at all these signs, you can see that a stroke does not always come with loud warning bells. It often arrives quietly, subtly, as small signs that, if ignored, can lead to devastating consequences. But precisely because of that, early recognition and rapid response make the difference between life and death, between full recovery and lifelong disability. From my experience, patients who are detected early, taken to the hospital quickly, and treated properly often recover well, maintaining the ability to walk, speak, and care for themselves. This not only saves lives, but also preserves the quality of life during the most meaningful years of aging. Therefore, always listen to your body, observe the signs, and never take them lightly. And finally, I want to emphasize one crucial message. Knowledge is not meant to be kept alone. Share this video with your family, friends, and caregivers. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications, and never miss important health updates. When we all learn to recognize the early signs of stroke, we can save more lives, reduce lasting damage, and build a healthier, stronger, and more independent elderly community together. Remember, every second counts, and your proactive awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself and your loved ones. Recognize early, act promptly, and share this knowledge widely. That is the best way to protect life from stroke.